My name is Mia Hartwell, and the night everything snapped open began at my parents' dining table under warm lights, polished silverware, and the same predictable hierarchy that had ruled our family for years. Sophie sat across from me in her tailored white blouse, swirling wine in a glass she bought solely because it photographed well. She had been talking for 15 minutes straight about her newly remodeled kitchen, and everyone leaned in as if she were unveiling a masterpiece. Then she tapped her glass. A soft, deliberate chime, a signal I'd learned to dread. "I want to make a little toast," she said, flashing the kind of smile that meant trouble for me and triumph for her. "To the brave ones who take on real responsibility, mortgages, renovations, adulthood." Her eyes locked onto mine. Not everyone can handle that. Laughter broke around the table, easy, familiar, careless. My dad nodded in agreement. My mom covered her grin with her napkin. The whole room seemed to tilt slightly, like the air itself was siding with her. I kept my expression still even as heat rose in my chest. They had no idea what I actually carried, what I actually paid for, what I'd actually built. Sophie especially, so proud of that house, that kitchen, that life. She clinked her glass again, smug. "Maybe one day, Mia, when you're ready." Ready. If she only knew. I lifted my water glass. Not wine, not champagne, just a plain glass that suddenly felt heavier than it should. "To the truth," I said quietly, meeting her eyes without blinking. "Whenever it decides to show up." Sophie's smile faltered. The laughter stumbled. A fork dropped somewhere near my mom's elbow. And for the first time in a very long time, I watched my family actually listen. The drive home after that dinner felt longer than usual, even though I'd taken the same familiar route I'd driven since college. My hands rested loosely on the steering wheel, but my mind replayed every smirk, every nod of agreement, every dismissive glance passed across that table like it was tradition. It wasn't the first time they'd laughed at my renter lifestyle, and honestly, it probably wasn't even the worst. But something about tonight felt heavier, more pointed, like Sophie had sharpened her words before using them. I walked into my apartment, flicked on the warm lights, and let my bag drop to the floor. The quiet welcomed me, not the lonely kind, but the kind that asks you to finally breathe. My place wasn't big, but it was mine. My little sanctuary where no one measured me by square footage or renovations or Instagram aesthetics. I sank onto the couch and stared at the blank TV screen, letting the silence unravel the tension knotted in my chest. My family loved to pretend their judgments came from concern, but deep down I knew better. They weren't worried about me. They were worried I wasn't living life the way they believed I should. A real adult in their eyes had a spouse, a mortgage, a kitchen worth showing off. They never asked if I wanted any of that. They never asked if I was happy. They only asked why I hadn't checked off the boxes they worshipped. The truth was simple. They didn't see me. They saw a version of me they'd created, a soft-spoken girl who never quite figured things out. Someone safe to underestimate. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, and let my eyes fall on the binder tucked beneath my coffee table. A plain black binder with no label, no hint of what was inside. If my family opened it, they'd choke on their own assumptions. They'd see the properties, the contracts, the rental incomes, the equity charts. They'd see the empire I built quietly, intentionally hidden, because I'd once believed privacy was protection. But tonight proved something else. Silence protects nothing when people mistake it for weakness, and for the first time I wondered how much longer I could sit quietly while they clapped for the wrong person. The next Sunday dinner arrived faster than I expected. I almost skipped it, but curiosity or defiance pushed me into the car. When I walked in, the table was already set, candles lit like a commercial for picture-perfect families. Sophie was mid-story laughing dramatically about a disaster with her contractor performing for her audience. The moment she saw me, her smile sharpened. "Well," she said, raising her wine glass. "Look, who made it? Our little minimalist." Minimalist, her new polite word for poor. My mom gave me a look, meant to seem sympathetic, but really blamed me. My dad pointed to the seat beside him, diving into a lecture about interest rates and why owning is the only responsible path. I sat quietly, letting the noise wash over me. Sophie leaned in, ready for her act. "You know, Mia," she said sweetly, "life must be so much easier when you don't worry about renovations or mortgages or anything real." She laughed. My father joined. My mother pretended to scold her while smiling. The old humiliation flickered sharp, childish, but it didn't stick the way it used to. I looked at Sophie. Really looked. Her foundation too thick, her eyes too bright, her grip on the wine glass too tight. For someone so proud of her stability, she was shaking. Maybe she felt something slipping. They kept talking, but I didn't need to join. I watched her brag about imported tile and custom cabinetry, my parents nodding like loyal followers. They worshipped her house as if it proved something. If only they knew the truth. If only they knew who had kept that house standing when Sophie couldn't. As she lifted her glass ready for another jab, a thought settled in me, quiet and solid. This wasn't jealousy. It was debt. Not financial. Moral. And it was long overdue. It was around midnight, long after I got home from that dinner, when Sophie's voice from 2 years ago resurfaced. Not the sharp, polished version from the table, but the broken one from the night she called me sobbing. I'd been sitting on this same couch when my phone buzzed nonstop. When I finally answered, her voice cracked before she even said hello. She told me she'd been laid off 3 months behind on her mortgage, a warning letter from the bank she couldn't bring herself to open. The Sophie I knew, the curated, always in control Sophie, was gone. In her place was someone terrified of losing the one thing that made her feel valuable. "I can't move back home," she whispered. "I can't let Mom and Dad think I failed." Her fear was so raw I didn't hesitate. I told her I'd help. No questions, no limits. The next morning I wired the first $3,200. 1 month became 6. 6 became a year. Every time I suggested downsizing or budgeting, she shut me down. "It's temporary," she insisted, "just until work picks up." But work didn't pick up and her lifestyle didn't slow down. By the second year, it was clear she wasn't trying to survive. She was trying to maintain her image. Back in the present, my phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. "Hey, can you cover this month's payment early?" My contractor needed an extra deposit. No greeting, no gratitude, just expectation. I stared at the message, 2 years of sacrifice tightening in my chest. She wasn't just asking, she was assuming. Counting on my softness. Counting on my silence. But Sophie had mistaken kindness for obedience, and she'd mistaken my quiet for weakness. I typed slowly, each word deliberate. "This month will be the last one." I hit send. For a moment, I wondered how long it would take for her to unravel. I didn't have to wait long. Sophie didn't reply right away. For someone who always had a comeback, her silence felt unnatural. I set my phone down, imagining the moment she read my message. Eyes widening, jaw tightening, panic replacing entitlement. It didn't take long. 10 minutes later, her name lit up my screen. I let it ring. Not out of spite, but because answering would drag me back into the cycle I'd just escaped. A voicemail followed, then another. Then a frantic text. "Mia, what do you mean, last one? You can't do this. The remodel isn't done. The bank will freak out. Are you seriously doing this to me now? Doing this to her?" The irony almost made me laugh. By morning it escalated. Mom called first. "Sweetheart, Sophie said you're upset. Can we talk?" Her voice was soft, cautious, like she was soothing something unstable. "I'm not upset," I said. "I'm done." "Done with what?" "Paying Sophie's mortgage." Silence. Then stunned her. "What?" Of course. Sophie hadn't told them. Her entire identity depended on being the successful one. Admitting I'd been holding up her life would shatter everything she pretended to be. Mom's voice shook. "Why would you pay her mortgage?" "Because she asked," and made it sound like she had no other choice. "She said she was doing great. She hasn't paid a cent since her layoff. That remodel you all praise, she did it unemployed." Mom went quiet, and in that silence the illusion finally began to crack. By noon, Dad called no softness. "Your sister says you're threatening the family's stability." "I'm not threatening anything," I said. "I'm stepping out of a role I never should have had. She's afraid she'll lose the house. She should be. That's what happens when you live beyond your means." He exhaled sharply out of arguments. That evening, Sophie messaged family meeting. "Tomorrow, 7 p.m. Be there. No apology, no explanation, just command." But I went. Not because she ordered me, but because I wanted to see the truth finally land in the room that had underestimated me for years. When I walked into my parents' living room the next night, I felt calm. Sophie stood in the center, arms crossed, mascara smudged, crying or pretending to. She opened her mouth ready to spin her story. But this time I wasn't afraid of hers, because I finally had my own. The living room felt too bright for what was coming. My parents had turned on every lamp as if lighting could soften the truth Sophie was about to bend. She stood near the fireplace, arms wrapped around herself. Mom hovered anxiously. Dad paced like he was preparing for a negotiation he didn't understand. Sophie started immediately. "Mia," she said, voice trembling but practiced. "I don't know why you're sabotaging me. I've always supported you, and now you're threatening my home, my life." Her words hung heavy, false. Dad stopped pacing. "She says you blindsided her, that you suddenly cut her off without warning." I exhaled. "I didn't threaten her. I told her I'm done paying her mortgage." Their expressions told me everything they had no idea. "Mortgage," Dad repeated. "Sophie, what is she talking about?" Sophie's face drained. She shot me a silent warning, but she'd built this lie herself. She hasn't paid her mortgage in 2 years, I said calmly. I have, Mom gasped. Dad stared stunned. Sophie stammered. That's not... I just needed help at first. Then things got complicated. You know how stressful... Stressful enough to remodel your house while unemployed? I asked. Her mouth closed. Dad turned to her. Is this true? She lifted her chin, desperate. I was going to fix things when work picked up. I just needed Mia's support. That's what family does. No, I said. Family doesn't let one person carry everything while pretending they're fine. And family doesn't mock the person paying their bills. Her eyes flickered shame, fear, both. I placed a thin folder on the coffee table. You want transparency? Here's every payment I made. Every month you said it was temporary. Every renovation invoice you sent me. Mom flipped through the papers with trembling hands. Dad looked at Sophie like he didn't recognize her. But I wasn't finished. You humiliated me at dinner, I said. Called me irresponsible. Told everyone I couldn't handle a house. I paused. While living in one, I kept out of foreclosure. Sophie's voice broke. Mia, please. But pleading wasn't truth. It was panic. I'm not here to fight, I said, closing the folder. I'm ending this. After this month, you're on your own. If the house is too much, sell it. Downsize, be an adult. Her knees wavered, reality finally setting in. The room fell silent, heavy, honest for the first time in years, and in that silence something shifted. Not in her, in me. For a while no one moved. The air in the room felt heavier than the truth I'd just laid bare. Sophie stayed frozen near the fireplace, her shoulders shaking in tiny, uneven breaths. My mom pressed a tissue to her mouth, as if she were afraid any sound she made might break the fragile quiet. Dad stood rooted in place, staring at the folder like it held the wreckage of something he wasn't ready to admit had existed. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way I had been for years. What I felt now was clarity, quiet, grounded, unshakable. When Sophie finally spoke, her voice was barely more than a whisper. I didn't mean to hurt you. I believed her. That was the saddest part. She hadn't acted out of malice. She'd acted out of entitlement. The kind that grows when no one ever challenges you. I know, I said softly, but you did. She wiped her eyes, mascara smearing into thin shadows beneath them. I couldn't let the family see me fail. And you couldn't let them see me succeed, I replied, not unkindly. Her gaze met mine, raw, stripped of all the performance she wore like armor. What am I supposed to do now? Live within your means, I said. Start over. Honestly, it's what I did. Dad finally sat down, rubbing his temples. We didn't know, he muttered. We had no idea. I know, I answered. Because you never asked. There was no accusation in my tone, just truth. Real, unembellished, overdue truth. We didn't hug. No dramatic reconciliation happened. Instead, something subtler shifted, an unspoken acknowledgement that the old family dynamic had cracked beyond repair. As I walked toward the door, my mom's voice followed me, fragile but genuine. Mia, thank you. For everything. We'll figure things out. I nodded, hand already on the doorknob. That's the point. Outside, the air was cool, quiet, unburdened. The porch light buzzed softly above me, casting long shadows across the walkway. For the first time, those shadows didn't feel like something I needed to escape. They felt like space room to step forward without dragging anyone behind me, and that was enough. The next morning, I woke to a quiet I didn't recognize, one that wasn't built from exhaustion or tension, but from space. Real space. The kind you feel when a door you'd been holding shut for years finally swings open, not with force, but with certainty. I poured coffee and stood by the window of my apartment, watching the soft gray-blue light settle over the buildings outside. For once, the city didn't feel overwhelming. It felt honest. Steady. Mine. My phone buzzed twice. A message from Dad. We're going to look at refinancing options. We'll handle it. Another from Mom. I'm proud of you. I should have said that sooner. Sophie didn't text. Not that day. But later in the week, she posted a photo. No filters, no curated angles. Just her in a modest condo kitchen. Hair tied back. Sleeves rolled up, a paint roller in her hand. The caption was short, new start, and for the first time I believed her. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need validation. I didn't need them to see me as successful or extraordinary. I only needed one thing: for them to stop seeing me as less. Setting boundaries didn't break my family. It forced us to see each other without the layers of expectations, assumptions, and roles we'd clung to for too long. As I finished my coffee, a quiet certainty settled in my chest. I wasn't the underestimated one anymore. I wasn't the safety net, the backup plan, the financial fix. I was Mia Hartwell, no longer hidden, no longer silent, no longer carrying what wasn't mine to hold. And finally, that was enough.